And maybe the scientific community will then become more engaged, take us more seriously, especially by the leading scholars involved in presenting the results, and the manner in which it is scientifically addressed. That's acceptable, hopefully, to the scientific community and non-scientific community, whatever that means. But the point is, we need to get more buy-in, wake up more people, to get them to alter their perspective on ufology, and to direct attention where it should be placed, I think, on the individual, as we initially spoke about, and on future, very dramatically different methods in order to understand the nature of the conscious experience that appears to be uh, valid, real, for so many people, for so long, and how we can best address, as you mentioned quite appropriately earlier, how we can best deal with this large population who unfortunately is suffering considerably as a result of their encounter. Um, we need to provide that kind of support, as well as continue with other related um, uh, ways in which we can develop our understanding of human interaction with this phenomenon, as well as others. You mentioned crop circles not long ago. That is another, I hate to use the term anomalous or paranormal, but something out of the ordinary, shall we say, something that can be defined by science. At the present time is considered anomalous. Crop circles are. How they appear overnight, in the manner and complexity in which they do, more than boggles the mind. The vast majority are faked, yeah. Uh, that's enough that aren't faked. Only one needs to be genuine, and many serious scholars, mathematicians in particular, are trying to decipher as best as possible if there's any meaning or messages associated with some crop circles. Not sure of the outcomes. Some people have their theories, but it remains to be seen. People who go inside crop circles, you alluded to this earlier, you probably wish you could someday, and I bet you do. Come away, you know more about this than I. Change. They feel something. Uh, what is it? I don't know the words to capture it, but it's very different being inside a crop circle. What, psychologically, consciously, something unique is going on. Why? I don't know. But a lot of people, and I'm going to be there as soon as I possibly can, see if there's anything to it. But people, Dr. Stephen Greer, who led the Disclosure Project, former physician, ER physician, um, try to facilitate disclosure on the part of many individuals we talked about earlier who share their unique encounters publicly for the first time to Congress. They what? They meditated for a few nights on the shape of a crop circle that they wanted to appear in the specific field that they were meditating in. What am I going to say next? You got it. That crop circle appeared the next day. And they all wrote it down secretively, which if I may be mistaken, but I believe that was the other element to the experiment, or if you want to call it that, that was quite interesting. And it did appear. Now, is there a connection between consciousness and some type of effect that it doesn't is not, shall we say, easily explainable, if at all? Now, that has happened another time, maybe many more times than I'm aware of, but I have heard it from a legitimate source on a separate occasion, where that effect, cause-effect relationship was confirmed. So, here again, connecting the dots, that conscious element, that unique human experience associated with a phenomenon. UFOs tied into crop circles? It sounds like they may be, because some people do report some lights, unexplained aerial events occurring when a formation is occurring. What that is, who knows? But something's happening, and it's not just somebody describing it with a whiskey bottle in their hand at 2 a.m. On a Saturday night somewhere. So I try to take these incidents somewhat skeptically. I encourage objectivity by all when they hear these things. There are, however, some events, some instances that are beyond comprehension, that again are quite profound, at least to me. And I may be the only one in the world, but I bet I'm not.
No, I wouldn't think so. No.
Yeah, enough so that I wrote a book about it, hoping that something can be done and became member-free, to be part of a possible explanation, at least to facilitate an explanation eventually as to what is going on. Sure.
Right, right. Well, obviously this is means an awful lot to you, and as well as it should. And it should mean a lot to everyone else that either has an experience or been an abductee or contactee or knows somebody. And the question that was asked that we didn't actually put out there was, do you have an opinion on why science refuses to study this? I think you kind of answered that in the last pieces of information that you were given. But if you had an opinion as to why science refuses to study this, would be if you would like to address it from that viewpoint for the viewer.
For the most part, exactly right. Science does not want to address it. There are obvious exceptions, but they're too few in number. In part, it's of course considered pseudoscience, like the whole general field of parapsychology is. There simply have not been enough rigorous, well-controlled studies using the so-called scientific method that have been applied to research in this area, and thus any conclusions that have been made, many of which have been made by ufologists, without strong scientific experiments. These conclusions are made. They're primarily made on the basis of anecdotal reports, which are very important, yes, but not to, again, the scientific community. So, yeah, it's a pseudoscience in general to them. They're reluctant to get involved for a variety of reasons, the obvious one being fear of ridicule from colleagues, no question about that, which may have an impact, adverse one on their promotional status and tenure, of course. Just ask John Mack, who we talked about earlier. We had to fight again for tenure because of the type of research he was doing in inductions and his conclusions, which he wrote in the form of books to support the fact that people's account of being abducted was indeed true. Well, that didn't sit too well. One didn't then, and certainly doesn't now. So colleagues, academic community, of course, may use that as a precedent for not engaging in research in this area. Likewise, what scientifically, not scientifically necessarily, what refereed scholarly journal is going to publish an article on UFOs? I don't know of one. There are journals out there that may, but the Journal of Near-Death Studies, there are some various UFO-type journals in the past, but not considered, shall we say, at the level as it should be for the general community to submit articles to. The point is that there are no journals for recipients to present results to, and that would again hurt promotion, tenure, if they did get engaged in research in this area. So the point is, professionally, it's not worth it. It's not worth their time and effort. Maybe when they retire, like me, who just recently retired, I'm more than happy to do so. And so this is where I want to go.
Well, welcome to retirement.
Oh, thank you.
Good for you.
Thank you. So yeah, and it's very, very important because if anything, we need more members of the, say, academia to become more engaged in this area. Excuse me. Um, and for the reasons mentioned earlier, they're not. So I don't know how we are going to attract them. I guess the best way again is to publish results that is compelling. If they are compelling, and that remains to be seen. We're still in the data gathering process. Of course, we'll present it in various ways, and we'll see what impact, if any, it may have on the academic community.
I don't know.
Um,
I think your data is pretty compelling. Seriously, I think it's very compelling. And I know that science has the scientific community, and I've had other, I've had astrophysicists on the show and physicists, and we have talked about their world, their academia, and the lack of understanding that comes with the field of their research or study, because most of these people have kind of stepped out of the box, much like yourself, where they're looking at different arenas of the human experience, not necessarily in the UFO community or extraterrestrials or how it affects consciousness, but in whatever field it was that they were, involved in. And the stories are pretty bad as far as how it limits you really as a professional with your creativity and where you would like to explore in different ways, no matter what your background is, right? Because of the shunning by your very peers themselves, because they know who butters the bread and who pays your paycheck. And so it's unfortunate we still have so many yes men on board, and I'd love to see the day when all the yes men I don't think so. I think if we turned the table here, you'd still be paying me, but we're going to be doing what needs to be done, not what you want to spoon feed everyone else, and get out of that box that they're in, so to speak, and do what comes from the heart and what comes from them naturally, because we're all just a human being having an experience here as well, right? We're having an experience, whether we're an experiencer. Life is an experience, no matter what your level of capabilities or understanding or consciousness or whatever. You're still having the experience of being human here on this planet. So another little soapbox I got off there, front. My bad.
very, very interesting. I really greatly enjoy your comments and your keen insights into all of this. You've been doing this for a long time, and your own, maybe more importantly than anything else, is your own personal, very unique personal experiences, which are extraordinarily interesting. Not entirely unique, which is great. But I think you benefited from it. It seems to me. Uh, did you mention you were a contactee? You have met. It
Yep.
may not be appropriate to discuss it now unless you feel.
Oh, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I talk about it on my show. I have talked about it, and I will continue to talk about it. Anybody that asks, I've had different levels of experiences with the extraterrestrial community. Some of it started out as a physical manifestation in my bedroom when I was about 4 years old. He ended up becoming one of what I would call my group, my guides, of my guides. Then I was introduced to some other beings, and those were not physical manifestations. I've had 3 physical manifestations in my life, and they're arbitrary. Obviously, at 4 years old, I had no idea. To me, that was my world. I didn't understand that nobody else couldn't see anything. I was like, really? You can't see him standing there? I mean, like, he's standing right there. I didn't know, right? So, it was just something that happened. It's just a part of who I am. I make no excuses for it, obviously. But it does maybe help people to understand a little more. This certainly wasn't something that I worked at it 4 years old, going, let's see if I can manifest, being standing in front of me, see if I can get my mind going. But moving forward, my next experience, and I have some blank spots. I have to tell you, I have some blank spots in my childhood. I've had some strange things that went on with my hair. I got pictures where the whole front of my hair, when I was like 7 or 8 or something like that, is all white. And then I don't remember how it got like that. I used to have like a little widow's peak, and it no longer existed after that. And I was born with orange carrot top hair, and I had freckles, and everything just shifted and changed, and my hair color changed, and the freckles started fading away. The white hair came in, and then the hair color changed. I was still a redhead, but it was a dark red. Now I'm more gray. that's just the way that goes when you get older. Anyway, so and then I've got some missing time, but I remember a specific, and I've talked to people about this on the show. I was driving down, and I grew up in Michigan, and it was kind of rural area where I was driving. I had been to visit my mom and at that point I was a single mom. And I had my two children that were with me at that time, because I had a third one, but he wasn't born yet. Were small, very small, and it was late at night, and I'd been over there. It was a Sunday afternoon, I remember that, and I'd been over there visiting. So I was taking my children back home. We were going home, and so it was dark, and I had them in their car seats. And I remember driving, and I remember looking out over my window, and I was thinking, what is that in the sky? And then, you know, I turned my attention to the road, and one of the things I noticed, I thought, very interesting, where'd all the traffic go? There was no traffic, and I was on the expressway, the freeway, whatever you guys want to call it. And then all of a sudden, this green glowing light came in through the back of the window, in the very back, and all I remember was, oh my God, not my babies. That's what I remember thinking. And then the next thing I know, I was still on the road, but I was in a different spot on that road, on the freeway, and several hours had passed, and again, there was no traffic, just none. And there's always some traffic where I was, you know, going to and from. And I looked back, and both of my kids were back there, and they were both sleeping, and I mean, I was just shaken to the core. That was my first time with that, and last time, thank God, knock on wood, that I had a specific experience like that one. Now that one I have no idea what happened, because I just don't. I was just the green light. It was like this green phosphorus light, and then next thing I know, it's 2 hours later, and I'm down the road, and you know, everyone's back, but you know, everything feels different. I did not know what to think about it. Matter of fact, I never even told anybody. I never told my mom. I never told anybody. Never told anybody about it, because I was just freaked out. I didn't know what to think. Oh, my camera's off again? See? It keeps doing that. I'm so sorry. Is it back on? Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know why that keeps doing that. Thank you for telling me. Okay, so then things began to change, and then I began doing some other things, and I do know that I had been taken back and forth just through various remembrances, but the next specific thing happened when it was in the 1980s, and the 1980s was extremely active for me, metaphysically speaking, and also talking about extraterrestrial contact. And I was taken aboard a ship, and I met a being, and she was a very tall being. She was extremely shapely. She had a very large head and like really strange eyes. They were like round, but yet they were pointy, and very thin lips, and she had a nose. Face was just like almost like a complete circle, very round, and her head was big, and she was blue. She was a light blue in color. She wasn't a gray. Everyone said, "Oh, you're describing a gray." I said, "No, she was blue." And the ship that I was taken to was looked like, remember playing with jacks when you're a kid, the ball and the jacks, and you bounce the ball and try to pick up jacks? It looked like a jack. That's what it looked like. And I met other beings when I was there, and I had communicated with them. And one of them in specific, I was just talking to a friend of mine today about it, was verbal in his communication. Most everybody else was telepathic, but he was verbal. And I say he because it felt male to me. I had no way of knowing whether it was male or female. I cannot describe this entity to you that would make much sense, other than because he's wearing this really odd looking cape looking thing, right? And it looked like his head was just kind of sitting on top of this cape, right? And big bulky feet, you know, you could tell there was a lot of bulk underneath this thing. And the cape is almost indescribable. It almost looked biologic, you know, like it was, but yet it was also flowy like material would be. So very odd to describe it, almost tree-like, fern-like, yet there was like some sparklies in it, but yet it wasn't sparkly. It just, you know, indescribable. I just can't, because we don't have anything to refer. I don't have anything here to, you know, say, hey, this is what it compares to. So his head had like these bumps all over it, and he was a little misshapen, and was not a pleasant entity to look at. It wasn't pleasing to the eye. And he clicked when he talked. Click, 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 click. Click, 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 click. You know, he just clicked. And I was looking at him the whole time he was talking, and I was like, and I understood at that time what he said. Can I tell you what he said now? No, not after 25 years. I don't remember. But that event was so significant to me that when I came out of that space, I drew a picture of that woman, her name, and I drew a picture of the ship, and I wrote some notes down. And I used to have that picture, and matter of fact, I went looking for it today, and I no longer have that hard copy. I used to keep it on an old website. I had, and I've lost it. It's not in my external drive anymore. But all the pictures that I had drawn from that encounter. And then 2 weeks ago, now that was back in the 80s or 90s, late 80s, early 90s. About 2 weeks ago, I had that same dream or experience. But when she brought me this time, it was her. There's nobody else with her but her. It was still the same being. But the ship there was an observatory where you could go and look out the ship and see where you were at in space. I got to see that before. And now this ship was sitting where I could see the Earth. Before I couldn't see the Earth. I was out in, God only knows where I was at. I don't even know if I was in this universe when I was on that ship before. And I think that's very weird because that's, you know, 28 years, 27 years, something like that, from the first time. And then I had this contact with her this time, and it is an experience. You do feel things, you do sense things, you know, you try to, you know, ascertain your environment. Is it friendly, non-friendly? What are these people doing? What am I doing here? How did I get here? How did my consciousness, how did they do that, right? So you have all these questions. So that's some of the experiences I had. That one I think is important because that one was, it repeated itself with the same entities, the same ship, but now it's in a different place. And I wasn't even thinking about this. I didn't even actually remember it. I don't remember these things until somebody brings them up, and then I go, oh yeah, well, let me tell you about that, you know, because I've had a lot of those. So that experience for me was pleasant. I've had a few unpleasant experiences at some point. We can talk about that. But I think that's a good place for us to be in as far as that, because you were talking about it going into the consciousness thing, and it does, because they show you things, it's like you download information that you would never be able to read from a book, because you absorb everything that's in there in that moment, which is their technology, their information, their knowledge, their feeling, their questions, their answers, where they've been. I mean, you get a whole education in just, it seems like just seconds. It really does. It seems like seconds. You come away in this sense of, wow, that was really cool. And the more you sit and think about it, the more the details start coming out. All the details start coming out because you're no longer in that moment. You're in an observation mode, and you can go in then and begin to see all the things that you actually experienced in the moment that you were so busy experiencing you couldn't process it and identify it. Does that make sense?
But it not only makes sense, it's beyond fascinating. But your audience should understand that you are not one of how many billions of people are on this planet. You're by far not alone. And the question is, why do so many people for so long share similar stories to what you're discussing? The nuances, details may vary, certainly, from individual to individual. The impact may vary from individual to individual. What you're saying to me is something that should be recorded along with others who we are, eventually interviewing, from who we have completed the quantitative phase of the study on. You should be a part of that. It's just one voice, but a very important one.
I'd be honored.
And yeah, and anybody in your audience who can get on experiencer.co and click on the right button that says take the survey, and you can take the survey.
Wonderful.
And it's being translated actually into German and Spanish to be presented at other countries. This is not just a English-speaking phenomenon, obviously.
For sure. It's worldwide.
Yeah, you experience communication probably via non-physical realm, which is why it was so unique and different in terms of what was transmitted so quickly, level of understanding, etc. You can't put words on it. And I just wish I could have it. Not the negative stuff, but and many do. Many want no part of it. Most of the public doesn't give a two shades about UFOs, which is, to each his own, obviously. But that mystifies me, and I don't appreciate the debunkers who would look at a story like you have, the stories that I'm discussing all day long, and says they're both too nuts. Let me go watch the ball game on TV. Don't debunk. That's wrong. I take exception to that. Be skeptical, fine. Good, healthy skeptical is important. It's normal, but be objective. And I think that's what skepticism is: being objective. Wait both sides of the issue. How I weigh your fascinating experience, so well told, also, but is that I've heard this before. This is not unique, people. I wish like I said earlier, I wish I had the good stuff to better understand the essence and the validity of what is happening here. But you don't always get the good. But it does say something about a phenomenon, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely, absolutely.
It has credibility, validity, whatever term you want to use. Is that science? Well, who knows what science is? But the main thing is we have a set of hypotheses established to prove or refute a hypothesis, a theory. The theory is, are non-human intelligent beings visiting and interacting in some way, somehow, for what purpose, I don't know, are they interacting with individuals? And that's the all-encompassing theory, are they? Okay? We all have our different opinions about it, but we look at it objectively. How best can we answer the question? By interviewing, I think, people like you. That is the best way. Not excavating Roswell, New Mexico, or analyzing the lights over Phoenix in '90, the Belgian wave in '80, and all those fancy-looking, highly unusual aerial events, which are noteworthy, important, blah, blah, blah. But some much more so than others. Nevertheless.
Well, we do have another question here before we run out of time. Mm-hmm. Are skeptics hurting the research by not participating in the investigation? I think that's a good question.
Good question. I think you should have a combination of skeptics and believers, non-believers, to keep everybody honest, investigating this topic. If everybody who's conducting research, firm believers in ET contact and alien abductions, etc., then it adds an element of bias into the study, and possibly may leak into the conclusions. So it may again detract from the validity of it if we're biased. We should be somewhat skeptical, very open-minded, not closed-minded, and weigh the evidence as dictates. Analyze it appropriately, control for it very well as much as possible, and base results, base conclusions, that is, on the results, on the well-controlled conditions, which is not easy to do.
That's right.
What was the question? Skeptics hurting the research?
Are they hurting it? I don't know. I don't know that you're not really interviewing skeptics, because they wouldn't take the survey anyway, would they? I mean, aren't you basing your data that you're collecting now based on people answering the questions in the survey on that website, experiencer.co, correct?
Yes.
So if they're a skeptic, then they probably, I don't know, maybe they have had an experience. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's not a question that's asked as a part of the survey, but we do plan to ask if, whether or not they had any preconceived beliefs or knowledge of the phenomenon prior to the experience, whether or not they've ever been diagnosed with a mental illness, because certainly there are people highly imbalanced, unfortunately, who will say that they have this experience when in fact they didn't, for whatever purpose, who knows. The point is, it's good practice to rule that out as part of the final population sample on which to draw conclusions from. So that makes sense to control, and that's the ways to do that. Nevertheless, it's a very complicated study given the unique complexity of the human persona and the unique complexity of the experience itself. Trying to put the two together and control for all confounding variables is not an easy task, and try to make sense of it all is a more difficult task.
Yeah. All right, so we have one last question here, and then we're going to wrap it up for us tonight. This one was actually directed at me, which I think is very interesting. Have I sensed a specific energy signature of individuals who have been abducted or malayed? I'm not sure what they mean by that term. So abducted or experienced. And I will tell you is that when somebody asks me to look at them, a lot of the time that information will show up around them. Sometimes it's just an influence that I see around them. And, I would like to tell you 100%, yeah, sure, I don't know. I mean, nobody gives me feedback, so I don't know. But I would have to have somebody actually ask me the question, because for me, I don't scan somebody unless I'm invited to do so, because I feel like that's out of integrity and you're invading somebody. So I don't view somebody unless they ask me to. So if you're interested in a yes or no question, whether that involves you or somebody that you know, certainly email me. And I'm going to go ahead and give you that email address right now. It's journeyswithrebecca@yahoo.com. And put in there show or something, show question. And then if you'll repeat this, I'd be happy to answer that specifically if you would like me to. Okay, and that being said, and I first of all, this has just been an extremely delightful time with you tonight, Bob. It's just been absolutely wonderful, Mr. Davis. I just so appreciate, first of all, your candor and your very eloquent way of putting things and your viewpoint on the world in which you're embarking upon, and it's a brave new world. It really is. It's Star Trek thing, again, it's Trekkies.
Let me more importantly emphasize what a pleasure it's been for me. I've done several shows, and you're by far the most insightful, and both in the style, and the personality, and knowledge. And it's been a pleasure to be on your show. I'm a big fan, and your audience is very fortunate to have you as a host on a weekly basis. I think that's right.
I do 2 shows a week. Thank you so much. How kind of you.
Great diverse range of guests, and the fortunate. The contributions you make on many levels are more than noteworthy and commendable. It's a pleasure to share with your audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before we go, please give out the web addresses again that you would like for people to remember or go to, and also how to get your book before I close this out tonight.
Sure. Thank you for mentioning that. But my website is theufophenomenon.com, and my book, The UFO Phenomenon, Should I Believe? is available on Amazon and many other book distributors that can be certainly found on Amazon.
And then we don't want to forget about the experiencer.co, and what about free?
Yes, that's the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounter. That's the ongoing study that's being done now. And if you're an experiencer, you take the survey. And if you want to certainly learn more about the Foundation, there's a lot of articles and information where they can do so.
Well, I'm looking forward to having you back on again, and certainly look forward to working with you in the future. I really do, Bob. And again, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's just been a treasure and a joy, and it's been lots of fun, and you've just answered a lot of great questions tonight, so it's been great. For the rest of you, I want to invite you back to the show Tuesday afternoon. I'm on from 2 to 3 p.m. Central Time. And my guest is going to be Shelley Entine, and she is an astrologer, and she's going to give us an astrological update as well as a forecast, as well as what's been happening in the craziness out there and what we can expect in the future. And then Wednesday at 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time, I will be having Robert Morningsky on, The Lost History of Womankind. For some people, he's a controversial guest. For me, I find him quite delightful. I love him. And I hope that you will join us again next week. And I'm so glad that you all came to this special presentation Thursday night to welcome Bob Davis to the show and give him your such wonderful attention. We really appreciate that. So until we meet again, where will your life's journey lead you? Many blessings, everyone, and good night.